What if your child's imaginary friend was never imaginary? We laugh it off. Oh, just a phase. But what if that invisible friend isn't fiction? What if it's memory, a silent coping mechanism in disguise? Philosopher Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Children create what they cannot say. And some imaginary friends don't leave. They linger, whisper, shape choices you don't even realize you're making as an adult. So what if that friend is still hiding somewhere in you? The rabbit hole opens now, and it's darker than we think. They appear during silence when no one's looking. Children don't just invent imaginary friends. They summon them out of absence, out of fear, out of a void adults pretend doesn't exist. The mind creates a voice when no one listens to yours. They aren't just pretend. They're portraits of unmet needs. A child growing up in chaos doesn't draw chaos, they befriend it and give it a name. That's the creepy part. These friends have rules. They punish, protect, and sometimes possess. So ask yourself, who did your inner child invent? And worse, who are they becoming now? Because they're not gone. They've just changed form. Ever seen a child argue with an empty corner? That's not cute. That's memory in disguise. Imaginary friends are emotion wearing a mask. They're how the soul protects itself by splitting. One part suffers, the other watches. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have." That's what these friends do. They're not from fairy tales. They're fragments of futures stolen by trauma. Your imaginary friend may have been your first therapist or your first jailer, and sometimes both. But what happens when you outgrow them? Or worse, they used to whisper comfort. Now they whisper doubt. What begins in childhood doesn't end there. These figures evolve. They become inner critics, saboteurs, patterns of self-betrayal. You no longer hear them as voices. You hear them as habits. Self-sabotage is often the grown-up version of a child's imaginary guardian, the one who said, "Don't try. You'll just get hurt again." So you stopped trying. You didn't lose them. You became them. And now they still decide your job, your love, your self-worth. It's time to ask, are you living or obeying ghosts? Think of the friend you once invented. What were they like? Kind? Angry? Magical? They weren't random. They were blueprints. If your imaginary friend always protected you, you probably weren't protected. If they punished you, maybe someone else did too. They mirrored what the child couldn't name. And we carry those names into adulthood as fears, attachments, defense mechanisms. Plato said, "What is honored becomes your reality." So what did your imaginary friend honor? Abandonment? Control? Silence? Until you confront that version of you, you're not healing, you're repeating. And it's time to stop. We outgrow toys, but not the stories they whispered. Your imaginary friend may not live in your room anymore, but they live in your rules. Don't speak up. Don't ask for more. Don't trust. Sound familiar? These aren't your beliefs. They're your ghost's survival strategies. You don't need them now, but they needed you then. And that's the paradox. To heal, you must honor the child who invented the friend without letting that friend run your life. That's called integration. It's not just inner work, it's soul retrieval. And it begins with the question, who was I protecting when I invented them? You were never weird. You were surviving. In a world too loud or too quiet, you found a voice through invisibility. Imaginary friends are how some kids process what therapy never touched. But as adults, they become shadows, unnamed, unnoticed, but not gone. They show up in broken patterns, unfinished projects, trust issues, emotional numbness. Until you see the original wound, you'll keep re-injuring your future. The imaginary friend isn't the problem. It's the silence they were trying to break. Are you ready to listen to that silence and translate it into truth? It's not too late, but you must enter the dark. Not all ghosts haunt houses. Some haunt choices. Invisible friends are just broken parts of us, still waiting to be heard. And if we ignore them, they act out through anger, addiction, anxiety. But when we turn toward them, we find not a monster, but a memory, a child who needed a companion because no one else showed up. Healing begins when you stop fearing your own creation and finally speak to it. What would you say to that little version of you now? And more importantly, what would they say back? They were never just imaginary. They were you before the world shut you down, before shame, before performance. You created them to feel seen. Now, you must become the one who sees, not through judgment, but through compassion. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Your imaginary friend was your first why. Now, it's time to grow a new one that doesn't need to hide, or hurt, or haunt. But first, you must thank the ghost, and then let him go. You were never crazy. You were creative. You were never broken, just brilliantly adaptive. But now, you don't need the ghost anymore. You need you. So go back. Sit with the child who whispered to corners, hid under blankets, invented company out of silence. Say the words they never heard. You are safe now. I'm here. And when you do, that ghost will smile, nod, and vanish, leaving behind something stronger, wiser, awake. It's time to break the pattern, begin the healing, and finally unlock you.